So going back to the concept of distribution, there are several issues with distribution, several sub-strategies. There is intensive, selective, and exclusive, and the push and pull strategies, which are overlapping distribution and communication. Retailing and wholesaling are two important components of distribution, with retailing being this idea that you will sell the goods and services directly to the final consumers. There are three decisions that you need to make when looking at retailing. Is the concept of product line, which is called product assortment. When you decide what product you will carry as a retailer, you have to think about the service mix as well, how much services you're going to provide. You don't want to provide the maximum amount of services. You want to provide a targeted amount of services based on the target and how much services they are expecting, because there's a cost in offering more or less services. And then you think about the store atmosphere. The store atmosphere is directly related to the displays and the layout and how people feel and what is their perception of the quality of the store atmosphere in relation to the products that they're expecting to get. So in retailing, there are different organizations, different retailers that are either independent or have contracts through other distributors or through the manufacturers. There's the amount of services that I just talked about. You have to think about the assortment in terms of width and depth. You have to think about the price as well, having a margin being low or margin very high, but that's again related to the type of target that you will be focusing on. So we talk about product line for a company selling their products. There's again a product line for the service. And these are oftentimes called SKUs, the number of items they sell, the number of SKUs. And it's not actually described as the width when you talk about a retailer, it's described as the depth, as the breadth. So for companies in general, they call it the width. For retailers, they call it the breadth. But then the concept of depth, which is applied for product mix, is the same as applied for retailers. So when you're a retailer, you have many type of retailers depending on your product assortments, the number of line that you have, the variety of products that you have, the limited quantities that you offer, the specificity and niche that you offer. I won't really ask you complicated question on this, because I just want you to know that there's many kinds, but I think people in the US are very aware of the difference between specialty store, department store, convenience store, supermarket. One that is not so famous is the hypermarket. So a hypermarket is just a gigantic supermarket. So hypermarkets actually are more either Japanese or European. They are like 2 football field size supermarket. So it's like a supermarket plus a mall plus another supermarket. That makes a hypermarket. Walmart has some hypermarkets, but they are not surprisingly as common as you would find them in Europe, which is funny because in Europe, most of the things tends to be in smaller sizes than what you find in the US, and not so much when it comes to supermarkets. They have many more bigger supermarkets called hypermarkets in Europe. So now a wholesaler, what's the definition? Essentially, it's the opposite of a retailer. A wholesaler is any activities in selling goods and services to those who are going to buy these in order to resell or use them as a business. Now, these are the strict definition, but sometimes it's a little more complicated than that. Example, Sam's Club or Costco. These are wholesalers, but at the same time, they are retailers. So they are like a large bulk volume type of retailers, which is normally, traditionally, a wholesaler for businesses, but there's still some individual that are buying it for their own use.
So what is wholesaling in this respect? Because they're like a wholesaler but a retailer.
Yes, they are both.
So they're selling at retail prices still, or are they selling
Well,
at,
what
because
happened?
there's still a markup there. Like, how are they making money if
So
they're
yeah, so that's it's a fascinating. I mean, the answer to this is a little bit of a long answer to do justice, but let me try to do it in just a short minute. Normally, a wholesaler margin is between 20 to 50%. I mean, depending. I mean, if you sell diamond, it's more than 50%, but normally it's 20%. A wholesaler, 20, 30%. That's normal. Um, Costco, I believe, goes between 14 and 16%. So because they go 14 and 16%, what are they doing? Well, what they are doing is they're giving a price which is not a retailer price. It's more of a wholesaler price, a very low margin wholesaler price, because they know that the amount of goods that they're going to sell per customer is much higher than a normal retailer. So they're sort of wholesaling to the public, if you want, because of the amount.
Oh, okay. So they're doing volume
Yeah,
at
they're,
lower margin.
yes, they're doing volume. And so not only that, but if you look in the tires, for example, I think they're the number one tires company selling tires in America. They're huge. But if you see, they're probably number one in soap. They're probably number one in detergent. You know, I can tell you that they're number one in wine. I work in the wine and spirits industry, and every year they do reports on the largest distributor of wine in America, blah, blah, blah. And every time it's Costco. It doesn't make much sense because when we think about a wine retailer, we think about Bevmo, Total Wines, or maybe the local market, family-owned market that people are using, or maybe some supermarket like Ralph's or Albertsons or something like that. That makes more sense. But in fact, Costco is so big in their purchase order. They make the biggest purchase order, but they make such a big purchase order that they actually pass the the, the, the cost in a very nice way to the consumer. But what they do also is they create a price point after with these brands that makes it very difficult for those brands to survive in the other channel of distribution because nobody can sell it at the price that Costco does because of the volume that they buy and because of the margin that they apply. So essentially, when you want to go in business, you have to be very, very worried when Costco comes and say, I want to buy products from you. You're very worried because they're going to buy so much. Can I produce? You're very excited because that's probably going to be your biggest sale ever. But you're also very worried is because you cannot control how much they're going to sell the product because you know their margin is so low that they're going to beat any one of your other customers, distributors. But by doing that, they're going to create conflict with the other channel of distribution where everyone is going to go, I can't compete anymore. I won't buy your product anymore because you sell it so low at Costco. Yes, but to buy at Costco, you have to be a member. Yes, so so it's it's a double-edged sword to do business with those big wholesaler retailers because their price is going to damage your brand eventually. So who can do very well in this? Brands that are not famous and they're just producers selling their brands, and then it becomes Kirkland soap, Kirkland tires, or whatever. Or brand that are very big, famous brand that they are like the top famous brand, mass produced and all of that, and they just so famous that they know that people buy their products at Costco, but everywhere else as well. So it doesn't affect you as much. So there's a lot of things to take into consideration when you're selling through these. Okay.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah,
So
it's a
yeah, thank you for your
huge
question.
advantage too.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's a great question. The only thing is, you see, it has so many moving pieces that you have to look at how this plays, but it plays mostly in the favor of the distributor. So that's why producers are suffering. But what do you get from those wholesaler? The same thing I mentioned before is they are really doing your inventory, your stock, financing your product, moving your product, keeping your product, giving you a recommendation for future product that you may be developing. So when you develop new product, there's the first stage, which is called ID generation. A lot of ID generation and ID screening from new product development first stages can be filtered, screened using your distributor. You don't want your distributor to dictate what are good IDs and what are bad IDs, but they are very good at giving IDs because they directly work with the consumers or at least businesses. Then there's another group of people that I want to talk about. It's the one at the bottom right here called brokers. So merchant wholesalers is um, a merchant that will be wholesaling, and they are family-owned wholesaler. They buy huge quantities of a few things because that's the difference also between retailer and wholesaler. A retailer is going to buy 20 of thousands of different things versus a wholesaler is going to buy 20 different things, but thousands of them. So it's sort of the opposite in terms of inventory. Then you have the manufacturer who eventually realizes that they need to buy some aspect of the channel of distribution, and usually the easiest one to buy is the wholesaling. And then they have a hub, which is they do the wholesaling, and then they have retailers that are independent. And then the last one, the bottom right here, is brokers. Brokers are very important. If I ask you who are brokers, you say real estate brokers, financial brokers, insurance brokers. Well, these are the most famous, but you can be a broker in so many different things. You can be a broker for tickets, concert tickets. You can be a broker for managing talents. And so brokers are people that take no ownership in deals. But what they do is they people that know people, and they're very good at putting people in contact. So you want to go sell at Costco, good luck, because Costco is doing reviews, but they mostly do reviews of people that have been vetted. And the best way to be vetted is to be vetted by a broker that has some custom of working with a large wholesaler, and then they're going to ease you inside the system by saying, I vouch for you, and I will present 5 products next Tuesday, and then one of your products will be yours. If I may ask a meeting with Costco, you see, if you're a good broker, you can ask a meeting with Costco and you get it. If you're an individual and you ask for a meeting with Costco, there's 1% chance that you get the meeting. But if you're a good broker, there's 90% chance. So then you get to be in front of. So what is going on? Wholesalers are disappearing, such as retailers are disappearing. They're morphing into producer owning them, or retailers doing also the wholesaling by becoming bigger. So the distinction between wholesaler and retailers is becoming smaller. Wholesalers have to increase the amount of services. Not so long ago, wholesalers would say, you know what, I'll sell to you, but I'll sell big quantities. Big means 1,000. Now they're going to sell 100. So they're sizing down. And then wholesalers are not only selling in the US, but they're trying to do wholesaling outside. So they're becoming some sort of international wholesalers. All right. Here's a family and they go skiing. How is this picture right now? That's a fun time picture. Everything is going well, right? You can imagine that. Now the question, what happened 5 minutes after this photo was taken? What do you think happened?
They skied down a cliff, like a hill or something.
So so maybe 1 minute after this, before they go skiing. Between that and they go skiing, what happens? Is the picture?
Equipment.
Yeah, they drop the equipment, and then the mom who's there says, "Okay, I need to take the ski of Jennifer," and then 1 minute after, you know, the other ski from Mary is going to fall, and then the dad's going to say, "Okay, I can't take pictures anymore because I have to carry my ski plus everybody else ski and gear." So that's what happens. And what happens after? You start hearing some crying. Oh, I lost my gloves. I lost my ski. I lost all this. So it's the picture deteriorates. But here's the solution. Because when there's a problem, there's a solution. And that's called an opportunity. So I created skis. It's a device that you put your ski on, and then you can just drag your ski, and now everybody can keep laughing and smiling and going to ski. Once you finish, you put it in your pocket and then you go ski. Okay. Now I've been trying to sell that for a year. I sold 15 of these the first year. I try another year very hard. I sold 300 of these. I'm minus $120,000 in my bank account because of this. I'm not able to sell. What can I do? I can go see a distributor, a wholesaler, a retailer, a Costco, a ski resort, the store, and I do this for another year, and then I come back to you and I say, you're my consultant, help me, what can I do? And then you say, you know what, put it on TikTok, because that's what everybody says, TikTok, 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 but there's not just TikTok in the world. So you go pitch it to investors. So that's what these people did. They went to pitch it to the sharks, and they went to Shark Tank and pitched skis. And then what happened at Shark Tank? One investor, Barbara Corcoran, gave them $50,000. And what happened after? Well, the beauty of Barbara is she made one phone call, right? She made one phone call to one big, you know, Dick Sports, because he's a friend, she plays golf with the executive and say, hey, Dix, I'm the co-owner of Skis, and I want to tell you about it. And then he says, okay, tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, let's talk. Then they talk, and right away they bought thousands of these. So what's the difference? The difference is, who do you know? Distribution is a lot about who do you know. So sometimes you see these people going to Shark Tank and they get $15,000, $50,000, $80,000. Really, this money that they're getting is not going to do that much. The biggest difference that's going to happen in their life is the fact that they know someone that knows someone. And if you're in business, who do you want to know? Who do you want to be the best friend with? Distributors. It's easy to be friends with producers. Producers are desperate. They know how to produce, but producing what? Can produce anything. Okay. But distributors are the one that gets to the consumer. Here's another example. Comfy, the original Comfy. These guys created like a sweater that is made of like a bed converter. They were doing this as a joke. They made nothing. These guys, 2 weeks after they got the few $1,000s from Corcoran again, they made $10 million. I think it was all over the internet. They sold it through QVC and Target. They went from broke to having $10 million in the bank. Why? Not so much because the product is amazing. It's because she knows who to talk to, and it's immediate response. This is the power of distribution. But distribution is not enough. So let's talk about communication. Communication is what? It's the P of promotion. So if I say the product mix, you know what it is. If I say the price mix, you know what it is. But if I say the promotion mix, you don't know what it is. So what's inside the promotion mix? It should be called the communication mix, but we cannot call it the communication mix because otherwise that would start with a C, and then it would not be the 4 Ps. It would be the 3 P and 1 C, and therefore nobody will remember it. So they call it the 4 Ps with the wrong word of promotional mix here. So what's inside? Inside, you have sales promotion. Sales promotion is the idea that you're going to create incentives to sell as quickly as possible. We have personal selling, which is PR, is the idea that you're going to try to create a goodwill and sort of propaganda information. Then you have direct marketing, which is that you have a data set of people and you know information on these people, and you're going to create a message, being an email, being a text, that you're going to send to their phone, cell phone, and that text is going to say, 50% on Campari juice or something, and orange juice, and which one? Oh no, sorry, personal selling is sales essentially. Sales as the sales force that you have. PR is public relations, and then finally, advertising is a paid form of communication where the person who's paying to be advertised is clearly identified. Versus PR, you see, PR and advertising are very similar. The difference is that PR, it's not clear that they're paying to be proposed, to be discussed. PR, it seems more journalistic. PR is someone who writes about multiple people and talks about good things, or they could be talking about bad things, but they are essentially like a journalist reporting information. But obviously, PR is creating content to give it to the media in hope that the media use this content because they're looking for content to talk about. And sometimes you have to give an incentive to this journalist to talk about you. So that's what PR is versus advertising. At least advertising is more straightforward. It's a media that is advertising and they are getting paid for it specifically. So what are the 4 objectives of communication? The first one starts with an I. It's informing. Communication is not just about making sure people buy. Communication is also making sure people know, hear, and memorize. If people memorize something, it's more likely that you can sell it to them afterwards. Persuasive communication is a deeper layer of information where you create incentives for people to see that it's worth for them to purchase. Comparative advertising is not legal for every type of industry. It's the idea that you want to make sure that people know that you have as much and more than your competitors. So sometimes there are brands that are more famous, or like political candidates that are more famous. And what you do is you sort of juxtapose yourself, compare yourself against that competitor in order to gain people perception that you are as good as that, but you are more. Reminding advertising is sort of in between informing and persuading, in the sense that you want people to remember the information and you want to remind people to buy. So you remind them their memory, and at the same time you remind them so they buy again. So these are the four objectives. Now, this is complicated, but I want you to remember just one thing, is when you communicate, you have to choose the right message and the right source to send the message. But not only that, but you want to make sure you use the right words that people understand. So you see, there's sender and message, and there's encoding, which is written vertically. Encoding is using the right language and the right words and meanings that will be understood. So if you're advertising kids, or if you're advertising educated people, it's not the same word that you're going to use. You have to use words that are salient for the people that you are actually communicating to. Same thing is you want to use a channel which is salient. You know, if you would want to advertise in front of before cartoons on TV, if you are looking for kids, versus you may choose the Wall Street Journal if you're advertising for adults, but that would not work. I mean, which one is better, the Wall Street Journal or Guns and Ammo? It depends to who. Guns and Ammo could be perfect for a specific group of people, but if you were to advertise to this group of people using the Wall Street Journal, it would not work, and vice versa. So that's what's very important. And since encoding is very important, then you have decoding, which is, do people understand the information once they receive it? Okay. So who are you communicating to as the first task, and then determining what objective do you want: inform, persuade, compare, remind. Do they know? How much do they know? Do they like? Do they have preferences? Have they bought before? Are they fans and advocates of the brand? So when you create a message, you have three um, elements: the message content, which is saying, do you have a rational appeal? So you try to get people to have arguments and see that in these arguments, there's always pros and cons, and you give information to for them to process the information and see the value of the information that you're giving them. So you're telling them, this medicine has a 24-hour relief. It doesn't taste good, but it works. And so people will see that you're being rational and saying you want it because you have a headache. It's a headache aspirin sort of medicine. And therefore, you want something that works, but there's a cost to it, which is it may not taste good. So people will see that there's some kind of authenticity in this product, and it's more of a rational. As we just discussed through the Tesla presentation, the problem of rational appeal is it requires information processing, and people don't like to process information. Most of the time, they want just a sound bite. So then sound bites is two kinds. There's the emotional, which we see was very well described this semester with Bernice and so forth. And then there's the moral, which is the same thing, where people will do the things because they would want to do what's right. So now the structure is this idea is that when you try to make a sale, is you're trying to bring information, and you have to decide about how soon, how much arguments do you want to have, and how obvious, and the order of the argument, and the style of the argument. So the argument could be humor, or the argument could be sex. So that argument, when you try to get people attention, are very good. Getting attention is easier than getting memory. People remember things but not always when it has to do with humor and sex. That's mostly getting attention. So then there's the question of format. So here it's very important in terms of the amount of colors. If you're using pictures more than words, it depends who you're talking, and it depends of the involvement. If it's something that is very expensive, maybe you have more words than if it's something that is cheaper, where you would have more pictures. So getting attention, getting people interested, desire an action, it's the model called AIDA, and it's sort of what you're trying to do when you are communicating, because you are trying to get people to memorize. So now using humor, fear, and sex and all this is very good because it's better for attention. But the problem is it has some negative in the sense that people will look at the scene or at the picture as a visual attractive thing, and not so much try to memorize what the brand is about. It deters from the center of the subject. So that's when they do research looking at advertising, they find out that when there's sex and humor, people remember the ad, but they don't remember the brand or what the brand is supposed to do. So it's very good for effectiveness of advertising from the ad perspective if you're trying to make very nice, very good ads, but not so much for what you're trying to change, the mind, or the mind you're trying to change, or what you're trying to change in people's mind. It doesn't work as well because when they process, they focus on the joke or they focus on the sex and not so much on the message. Okay, so let me give you some example of structure. So, for example, this is an ad structure where you try to be seen as you have many choices. One is to put an ad where you can see a Red Bull can, and that's fine. Or you can use something like this where there's more of a imagery, a novelty, and the contrast, and people have to do some processing. And the fact that it's more creative, it makes them feel that the brand may be more uh, special than if it was just showing the bottle. But now you're selling a luxury product. In that situation, maybe you want to show the product because people want to perceive luxury, quality, exclusivity. Distinctive format it's unexpected. I mean, to sell a product like Hemorrhoideal, which is a cream for when you have a rash on your rear or hemorrhoids, it's not that easy. So you have to be very creative, and you have to do it in a way that they get the message, they remember the message, but at the same time, it's not offensive or whatever. So this ad actually, when it was launched, won many prizes for people remembering what it was in a non-negative way, I suppose. This is an old ad, but these are very famous. I know they are ads from the 60s, but they won prizes as best ads of last century. And so this ad was the fact that a lot of people would not buy a Volkswagen Beetle because they're too small. I mean, you have to go back thinking about the US in the 60s, the cars were huge. And so Volkswagen suffered from the fact that people thought they were too small. And obviously they had many different ads that were playing on that. And this one, it says, it makes your house look bigger. And obviously people, you had to change their mind about what they thought, because what they thought could be correct, but if it didn't have to be correct, it had to be changed. That's what the company was thinking about. This is an ad from Europe, and it shows a brand of car. And so this was a car that was not very successful because it was really not good looking. And I suppose they were trying to kind of boost the appeal for this ad. So what they were trying to do is for people to actually transpose. If they were trying to make it better than it was, so they were trying to show the practicality and the versatility of that car, where it could be very functional, like a car you will take for a trip, a vacation trip, a journey, an odyssey. It's an odyssey. It's you go look at the scenery and you go travel and so forth, and you could put more people inside. But at the same time, it'll be a sophisticated car So what they do is they force people to transpose the image. And by doing this information processing is they're creating an image, they're creating a movement, and they make people feel there's more to that product than just being just a car. They make the car playing a role. So which media do you choose? You can choose the more persuasive media is salespeople. Salespeople is the #1 persuasive media, but at the same time, salespeople is the most expensive media. So you choose non-personal communication channels. And so the idea is that if you have a person has more, so non-personal communication channels will be like just a printed ad. But if you use a person, which person you're going to use? So you can use a celebrity, which will have a certain amount of appeal, but may not be perceived as the credible person because they don't have expertise. They're just a celebrity. If you a for-profit, a non-profit organization, you also have different way to look at this because they are in people's psyche perceived as different, as being more honest when they communicate, non-profit organization. So then you can use the common man theory as well, that people also relate to people that look like the stereotype of who would use the product, and then they can recognize themselves, and it adds some credibility. So celebrity have a lot of credibility, but the problem sometimes with celebrities, they also cost a lot of money, and they can backfire because, and that's so true in the music industry, where you would have a celebrity that everybody loved at one time, and a week after that, everybody hates. So when you use these people, there's a risk that their image changes. So how do you evaluate the campaign? So I've mentioned that just a few minutes ago is there's two ways. One is you manage how much people remember from the campaign itself. So the efficiency of the ad for them remembering the ad and remembering what the ad was, the message was. And then another one is to look at sales. So sales, relating sales to communication is very difficult. I'm not saying it's impossible because, for example, coupons, which is a type of sales promotion, is much easier. You have 1,000 coupons out and you have 200 that come back. You can measure the effect of coupons. But when it comes to advertising, for example, in a magazine, it is very, very difficult. So sales and ads is obviously a big subject because people are always wanting to know how much money do I spend and what do I get. Now, what are your communication budget? Affordable, what I can spend, the percentage of sales. You want to increase your sales by 10%, you increase your budget by 10%. Objective on task. So then you have all the objectives that you want to achieve, and based on this number of objectives, you're going to have communication programs being created in order to achieve those objectives. Obviously, that one is the more complex and more expensive. And then you have competitive parity, is you try to estimate how much your competitor is spending by looking at the events that they sponsors, the number of times they appear in magazines, the number of radio ads, the number of postings that they would have on social media and all that. And then you try to replicate that. Now, I talked about a few sales promotion, which is the idea that you will have a short-term incentives in order to encourage sales. So 2 for the price of 1, 50% off, some game or something like this. These will help. Here are some examples. Cash refund, coupons, all of these are sales promotion methods. So there's sweepstakes, games, and all that. These is there, you can't do it all the time. You have to vary because our sales promotion goods, sales promotion is really good, but you have to be careful because if you do it too often, they lose their impact and they damage your brand. So you have to sort of do it with parsimony. There's also some sales promotion as you working in the trade. So as a B2B, you can give incentives to your wholesalers. You can pay to have space in the distribution network. You can share some of their advertising costs, and you can give them extra products so that way they can push it to the consumers. So discounts is if they buy more products, you give them a little reduction, or you give them a percentage of reduction. If you buy 5,000 products, you get a 10% discount. If you buy 10,000 products, you get a 15% discount. So you give them this kind of incentives, or you give them allowances, which is that you pay some of their expenses. So they're doing events, for example. They're organizing the events, and you are paying for the cost of the events to be carried out. The other thing that you do is you go to trade shows and conventions. So it's kind of sad to say that now, because this is something that we were all involved. And I know at the beginning of the semester, every year, there was the NAM show. And almost the entire class was going to the NAM show. And it was almost like a religious pilgrimage for the MIA students. And obviously, all of those things have disappeared. And now they're sort of starting to be converted into some online seminar and all of this, but it's not the same. But however, those trade shows are very important. So you pay for trade shows, and that's part of your sales promotion, or you pay for the trade shows or participate to the trade shows of your distributor in their territory. So when you give a sales promotion, you have to think about the incentives, the size of the incentives. This sales promotion cannot be for everyone. So you have to set the condition of who's going to be in it. You have to think about how to promote and distribute the program. So are you going to use advertising? Are you going to use PR? Are you going to use digital marketing? Then you have to think about how long is it going to be? When is it going to be? And most important is you have to evaluate these programs. So it's one thing to do sales promotion, but if you don't evaluate how they work, you don't know. So I remember I worked with an executive of a big company who was my competitor. Who worked for my competitor, and he was doing some kind of consulting on the side, and he helped me. And one thing I learned with him is you have to be very careful on how you spend your money when you communicate. There is things that seems really good, like advertising, but they don't pan out to be as good. So when you have a smaller budget, you sort of want to see your communication dollar being spent into something that you have a better control. And so, for example, when I was selling my cognac, I would put a tag, a neck tag, which will have a dollar reduction. And so if people don't buy, I don't spend $1. And if people buy, I spend $1. And sometimes that dollar that I would have to contribute for people to buy my product was actually my margin. And one would say, I mean, my dad in particular was very upset with this method, because he would say, you're in a business to lose money because you give people $1 if they buy your bottle. Yes, but if you advertise, you give $15,000 to the person that's going to advertise your product. You don't know how many bottles you're going to sell. So it's $15,000 for hope. And I have to pay the $15,000. If I don't pay the $15,000, I have no advertising. Versus here, this necktie, I would pay for having the necktie produced and put on the bottle. But then if they don't buy, I don't have to spend $1. So every time I would spend $1, I would know that I have actually someone consuming the product, and eventually someone that would want to try to consume the product again. So it was a very good method to communicate. Sales promotion can be very good from that perspective, where you have oftentimes a more direct connection between your communication budget and the return on investment, which is sales. So public relation is this idea that you're going to try to create favorable information that will be used by people in order to make an image about you. But that's only one side. There's usually two sides of public relation. The other side is to take care of crisis as well. So public relation is part of marketing. So it's like public relation goes into communication, and communication goes into marketing. But the best people to talk to the public when there's something bad happen, it's not the marketing people, the true hardcore marketing people. Why is that? Because they are supposed to satisfy people needs. And when you've made a mistake, best is to first recognize it and give that task to someone who is more like a lawyer, like a journalist lawyer. And that's what PR people are trained for. They are trained to speak in public. They're trained to know how to deliver a message that's not going to create more damage. And so PR is has multiple tasks. Is the task of press relation, public publicity, public affairs, lobbying, investor relationship, and then development, looking for how we can have more relationship. So they organize the trade shows, for example. They organize the websites. They manage the social media. They manage events. They create all the visual contents. They work on the corporate identity, the annual reports. They speak to the media as well. So all of this is extremely important. And in fact, I would say in the past 10 years, what has changed the most in business and in marketing is the fact that public relations people have even more a bigger part to play, because right, a lot of the things that they did was very related to big corporation, and big corporation were having a ball because they were doing push and pull. But because now small business through digital marketing can actually do pull easier, the job of PR has been growing inside small business because now they have this responsibility. So their responsibility is setting the objective, PR objective, choosing the message, implementing this message, and once again, evaluating. So now the last one here is this concept of advertising. So advertising is a paid form of non-personal presentation where the person paying to be advertised is clearly identified. So when you select a media for advertising, is you have three elements of decision. It's the reach. So the reach is how many people in my target will actually see this advertising message. The frequency is the number of times that they will see the message. And then the media impact is this media, how much does it change their mind? So for example, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Economists are very good journal because they perceive as being experts. They perceive as being having the authority and the knowledge. So a lot of people read these and believe them to be true. So these media have a very deep impact. The frequency also is really good because they tend to be read by multiple people, not just by the person that's subscribed to them. And then the reach, obviously they have a very specific targets, like I made a comment before. I mean, gun and ammo and the New York Times is not the same target, and you have to take this into consideration. So the 7 major advertising media are television, radio, magazine, newspaper, the internet, billboards, and social media. So now something I want to tell you, it's not in the textbook, but it's something good to know because you don't want to look like you don't know. So now you know what's a business plan. A business plan is not a plan where you talk about what's your concept and model for running your business. A business plan does not exist. It's the combination of several existing plans. Inside the business plan, you have a marketing plan, you have an accounting plan, a business law plan, operation plan, finance plan, budget plan, production plan. So you have multiple plans, and these multiple plans make the business plan, okay? Now, the marketing plan in itself exists, and inside this marketing plan, you have the definition of the situation of the market, you have the definition of your objectives, your strategies, and then the implementation of the action through what's called the 4 Ps, okay? Inside the 4 Ps, you're gonna have one which is communication, and inside communication, you're gonna have one which is called advertising. Now, there's something called advertising plan. So you see it goes down to that section. The advertising plan has another name. It's called the copy strategy. So if you work with some people and they say, what's the copy? Is they're talking about the advertising plan. if you were to talk with some people and say, let's write an advertising plan, I think everybody would know, but it's also good to know the trade name for it, which is copy strategy. So the copy strategy, I won't go into a lot of information, but I wanted you to have this because I would not be surprised in 1 year, in 2 years, you go back to the slides and say, oh, I remember the professor talked about the advertising plan, it had another name. Then, yes, copy strategy. What's inside the copy strategy? There is the problem you're trying to solve. You're talking about people don't know your brand. You're talking about the fact that your target has changed and you need to reach your target. That's the nature. The objective of the communication. So it's defining the target and then explaining specifically the change you want to make. And then define the incentives that you're going to be working on. So that's the third level, which is their motivation. What is the need? How much do we have to convince them to and that this product is better, talking about the benefits and how these benefits are superior, and creating a J&D that will make people want the product. So that's the third, is essentially talking about the J&D. And then finally is you have the more artistic, creative part of advertising, which is essentially it's like writing a script. What is going to happen? What is the scenery? Who are the actors? What is being said? And how long do we have? And where is this going to be played? Okay, so copy strategy is very interesting. I want to finish advertising and showing you 3 things that are not in the book that are tremendous when you are someone that's going to work in advertising. Is there's 3 levels to motivate people. So motivation is on the performance of the product. Motivation is on the association with the universe where the product is being used. And then the third is the representation of the product. So product, result, and universe. Okay, so we're going to look at some. So remember that, product, performance, and universe. This ad is showing this car. Is it showing the product, the universe, or the performance, the result? This ad is essentially just showing the car. So this is ad which is focused simply on the product. See, 1 product, 2 performance, 3 universe. Now let's look at this one. This ad shows a bottle of Coca-Cola, which is on the side with some kind of sunset scenery. Does it show the product? It does show a little bit the product. Does it show the performance? Doesn't show the performance. Does it show the universe? It shows the universe. So it's a 90% universe, 10% product, maybe more, 20, 80, okay? So every ad is not just one, it can be a combination of the 3, but it's very important to understand that when you do the creative, you have to think about this. This is a Volkswagen Golf, and it shows the mileage dial, and it says etc. and etc. and etc. Does it show the universe? Yeah, you can't see where this car is being used. It doesn't show the product because you don't see the product. Therefore, it's the performance. It gives you in a creative way, an image of reliability, performance, and so forth. This is a can of crab food, crab meat, and it shows just the how do you call that? The claws or whatever of the ends of the crab, and it's written in French. It says exterior sign of freshness. So it's telling you this is a very fresh crab, and obviously it's so fresh that it's alive inside. So this time it doesn't show the product. It doesn't show the universe. You don't see people eating it, and it's a camping situation or a nice restaurant situation. It shows the performance. It's the freshness of the product. And all of these ads, I've selected them because they won prizes for best ads in different countries and so forth. This one was in the Middle East. He won best ad in the Middle East, and it was from a famous company called Heinz. Heinz salad cream. Any food tastes supreme with Heinz salad cream. So obviously, if you're in the Middle East, let's say the Emirates, and you see this, and it doesn't look like supreme. This looks like disgusting for these people. And so that ad was saying even that doesn't look good will be delicious because of the salad cream. So does it show the product? Well, you sort of see the label, I guess, but not really. Does it show the universe? No, you don't see the people. You have no idea of woman, man, but you show the performance that this thing that looks pretty bad will be good. Now, this one is a McDonald's ad, and it says official restaurants of the NHL. So the NHL people will probably like it more because they'll see the sign of the mouthpiece, and there's the idea of the smile. So obviously, it's not a product commercial because you don't see the burgers. It has to do with performance, and maybe it tells you about the universe. It's something that is friendly for the users of the NHL. So it's probably a 10% universe and 90% performance. All right. So every ad, the next time you see an ad in a magazine or on online or whatever, you can see it always is based on this thing: product, performance, universe. Any questions? Okay, so now I'm going to go fast here because this is a repeat. It's sort of button-up strategies. So we talked about strategies before, and we talked about the fact that you need to understand that it costs more money to attract new customers than keep customers. So it is very important to develop a relationship with your customers. The idea that keeping customers makes your business more profitable. Getting new customers that never bought from you reduces your margins because you have to spend money from your margins. And that was a discussion maybe 2 hours ago, that the more advertising you do, the more marketing you do, the more marketing costs you have. Your marketing costs actually get reduced the more you do business with the same people. But you can't stay with the same people all the time because people change, and you have to create new products for the new generation and all of this. So I'm not saying you want to do business just as a repeat, but you want to really believe that repeat is important. So you have to go through this cycle about what are the needs, let's make the product, let's deliver it the right way. So delivering is very much this concept of the sales promotion and also the place. So those two P's are very important. And then you retain customers because you generate satisfaction. But before all of this, you have needs and value, sale, creation of products with the margin, better product, better satisfaction, more sales. And it's a cycle. Business is a cycle where you have to understand, you have to have this wheel that keeps on turning. So what is value? We talked about it. What is satisfaction? We talked about it. The idea is that they are different because one is before you buy, that's value, and the other one is after you buy, it's satisfaction. When you do strategies, you do benchmarking, which is that you assess your competitors' strengths and weaknesses. But I talked in depth on that before. This is just a review. And that there are 4 basic strategies. Oh, where are my basic strategies? They are not here. So the 4 basic strategies are market penetration, new product development, market development, and diversification. That's the basic strategies. They're also called the end-soft strategies. But then you also have the competitive strategies from Porter, the Porter strategy, which is overall cost leadership, focus, differentiation, middle of the road. We talked about this, it's just a review, and operational excellence, customer intimacy, product leadership, and market leader, market challenger, market follower, and market nicher. So all of these are your strategies. So now that you've identified your opportunities, what are the strategies? I'm just guessing you're all going to have new product developments, pretty sure. But when you're doing your analysis, and I know you studied this in previous classes, is you studied the Porter's 5 forces. Take this into account. And some of you have mentioned that. I think you should all mention the Porter 5 forces. I think the SWOT analysis and the Porter's 5 forces are the 101 of looking at a market. And then doing benchmarking with the 11 steps that I gave you in the previous slide. Using this will help you really analyze the market and then come up with a very good definition. So what is digital communication? And I'll go fast on this. Is the different online marketing methods that you have: website, search ads, display ads, and using email. There's advantage and disadvantage. Obviously, the advantage of online marketing is you can send very specific tailored message to your target. You can look at the number of people that actually click and follow through. You have those cookies and all of that. So I was saying sometimes it's very difficult to see how much you advertise and how much you sell. You can use sales promotion that works the best, but everything else is a little difficult beside online marketing, where you have more and more technology that allows you to track, and this tracking is really good. You can also see how much people spend time, where did they come from, where they're going. You can use search engine to make it better and so forth. But the problem is consumer can screen out from messages, and more they do that. They can even have software that protect themselves from being targeted from ads. Ads used to be through online marketing were seen as bigger than they were, and some people are giving them too much importance, and that's been sort of changed because now we can also see that there's a quantity of ads and there's a quality of ads, and the message can be also lost due to some issues with hacking and so forth. So the elements of a website is creating good content, building a community, customizing, so you want people to have a more individual experience. You want to make sure that they understand what you're talking about, so there's good communication, and that you make connection and links with other things, and essentially they feel that they're learning something, and eventually that there's a commerce side, so you try to monetize a good website. So how do you create what I was talking about here, the community? Is you go and create online forums. So one music, it's called Music Banter, that probably participate, some of you. You create blogs and vlogs. So I think someone that I would recommend, not everybody knows, but I think everybody should know him, is Gary Vaynerchuk, also known as Gary V. Gary V is a very likable person, is a little harsh and use bad language. Less, I think, now that he used to, so it's better. But really, is the depth of his content is really good. It's a little repetitive, there's some concept that he repeats, but I think he's someone who is very modest, and it's someone that really cares for others, and he's giving a lot of great advices. If I had to rate him, I would say he's one of the best coach for business that you can get for free on the internet, one of the best. And then there's social networks, you know them: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and so forth. So if you are doing a marketing plan, do not think that social media is the only source to communicate. It's a great source to get engagement and to get people to share with other people, to create a community, to create a movement, to sort of seize trends and so forth. That's true. It's very immediate, it's very organic and all of this. But marketing, the key with marketing is to really keep thinking about who is my target and what do they want. And then the method to do it, maybe it's LinkedIn, then it changed to Facebook. I mean, we can see that in the past 20 years, at one time there was a thing called MySpace. You may have all forgot about it. So things evolve. So having nostalgia on the different social media is wrong. And in some way, I find that social media right now have too much power, and it becomes a problem. I actually know someone who is a celebrity and had several million followers on one of their social media, and their social media got turned off. And then that celebrity, he had to actually pay someone in that social media to turn it back on. And I was the witness of all of that. And I thought this was really dirty that they could do this. Not long ago, you remember the US President Donald Trump, who had his Twitter account being turned off. All right. Right or wrong, that's not the issue. The issue is that they have the power to make decision, and they make the decision without having a very clear rule. So what's changing now hasn't pan out to be existing, but people are developing some blockchain social media. And the idea is to use blockchain in order to create the equivalent of YouTube, but a YouTube with a blockchain, so nobody can actually stop it. It stays organic, and they're trying to create a Twitter, a blockchain with Twitter and all that. So it's not going to be Twitter, but another side. So I would not be surprised that if once they succeed to do those blockchain style Twitter, it's possible that in 10 years, if I still teach EMEA, is I will tell them about Twitter that used to be big and now we don't even remember what it is, like MySpace and all that. So things evolve, and in a way it's great because everyone gets to have their chance. So word of mouth is very important when you have social media because it's one of the benefits. So you have to think about the concept of influencers and giving samples, identifying those event influencers, creating some word of mouth referral channels where people can actually communicate with their followers to share things in order to create word of mouth. You can't expect people to do it naturally. You sort of have to incentivize sometimes people to share the information. So mobile apps are really good in the sense that now they are helping people to make less and do more. And it's the new way of for businesses to program. So it's like a website contained in one software for people to have less to do in order to get to the buy. That's essentially what you're trying to do. Get them to buy faster with less steps. So mobile marketing is great because you can make it very tailored. It's always on, so it's not like a store where you would be closed on Sunday or something like that. It gets people to buy right away, and it's very interactive where people can communicate with one another. And finally, it needs to have some critical elements. The ad, so also called the copy, ad or copy is the same in communication, should only be 50% of the screen for an application. Because if it's too busy, people don't use it. It's a little bit like Yahoo versus Google. If there's too much, people don't use it. Brand should limit the ads to simple phrases. Maybe, what's the offer? What's the tagline? The brand should be in some top corner and not take all the space. Use few colors, and you should try to have call to action with a bright color. So that's my conclusion for this class.